Hi, my name's Qays Moses Nsanja. I'm 21 years old. I'm from North London, born and raised. I recently graduated from the University of the Arts London during this pandemic. UAL, that's what we refer it to. My course was media communications, but I've always had a passion for filmmaking. So I usually handle the camera, I do the editing, I've written a couple of scripts as well. Location scouting, casting, producing, all of that in it. In fact, I've even started my own production company. It's called ProQ Productions or ProQ Productions. Say it however you like, I don't mind. Basically, it's a mix of the word ProQ, which is my childhood name, professional case, and it's a mix of the word production as well. In my own free time, I've made my own projects. One of which I feel I'm most known for is the UAL documentary series.
Why did you decide to create your film series, UAL?
With UAL, what I'm trying to do is I'm kind of more or less calling out my university for what I feel biases that it has. So I'm kind of planning to do a trilogy. I've done the first episode so far, which is about class. I'm working on the second episode right now, which is based on racism, hence the title Race. But the thing is, race is such a big topic, I had to split into two parts. So I've recently released part one, currently working on part two. I don't know, lockdown's been a bit mad, so I'm just trying to get it done. And hopefully once I finish part two of episode two, episode three will be titled Self-Expression. It's not that I necessarily hate my university, I just feel that mine, like many others, at least from what I've heard from other students, particularly those of colour, working class background, is you expect university to be this place that cares about diversity, that's inclusive, that's tolerant, place where you can have loads of cultural exchange, be yourself and feel accepted. But I kind of feel that although universities do try to present themselves like that and they are like making progress and steps in certain ways, I still feel more can be done. Like sometimes I don't feel that we're really valued, that we're listened to. I feel that students, even like sometimes faculty too, can get away with being, for example, very elitist, racist, and that behavior shouldn't be happening in somewhere where I feel people want to be safe, yeah, and to learn in a good environment. So here's a clip from the most recent episode.
This is Fortsmere, the secondary school that I went to. The thing is, it's in a really white middle class area. So being a young black man, I never really fit in that well. If there's anything I learned from secondary school, it's the fact that not only is it the government, social institutional racism is everywhere. It affects people of colour like me. It's what ruined my childhood. When I was passionate about things, I was seen as angry and aggressive. I was never really truly accepted. This is the place that made me in so many ways. There's so much pain and struggle that went to my adolescence being in this school. And I thought things would change going to UAL, but clearly they didn't. People of colour in every social institution, whether it's schools or like anywhere, we never fit in and we're never truly accepted.
This particular clip is from episode 2, Race, part 1. And it was me outside my secondary school called Fortismere. I went there for a good 7 years. I went to the sixth form as well. As I mentioned in the video, it's a very white middle class area. And as a young working class black man, I didn't really fit in. No, I know it seems like I'm saying the exact same thing, but that's literally how I felt. So the whole reason why I'm kind of exploring that part of my childhood and I'm making this particular episode a lot more personal than the first one and everything is because I kind of wanted to show a direct parallel between my experiences at secondary school and sixth form and then going to UAL for university and how like not a lot has changed.
What kinds of racism have you experienced in schools and universities?
There's many people of color who could really relate to that, all these stories that you hear about young people of color not being treated well by their fellow students, even just like biases in curriculum, not learning about like other cultures. It's always predominantly like white British culture that we learn about. It's particularly black students are disciplined a lot more, and that's kind of that's not an environment you want to be in as a child. So that's what I went through. Like I said, I felt like I wasn't allowed to express myself, and when I did have valid grievances, I'd still be seen as angry black man, even though I was a black boy. I wasn't even 18 yet. So all of that happening to me, I thought, you know what, I could have a fresh start at university and, I'll be with people who are a lot more mature and like, I'll be doing what I love, which is, making films and everything. There was still like, a couple of hiccups to put it nicely. Like I was going through the exact same thing. Like at times students being openly racist, tutors being openly racist, like the curriculum not accommodating different cultures and students of color. It was like I thought that our culture was kind of used as a prop at times. What I mean by that is kind of like when it comes to culture, my culture, for example, black culture, yeah. Even though we've had to fight through various hurdles and everything, and we're still discriminated even to this day, we've still kind of like contributed a lot to like, you know, mainstream British culture, American culture, you know, like within the Western world, for example, when you talk about music like hip hop, grime, dancehall, Afro beats, you know, films, dance, like our own paintings and drawings that highlight our experience, our very unique experience here. It's great that people from all cultures like love and appreciate our art. That's fine. What I don't like, at least especially within my university and many others, yeah, is people be kind of using that culture as a prop and saying I love this and I love that. But then the people who actually come from that culture never get to like benefit from their hard work and kind of have their voice.
When did you first become aware of the problem of race at your university?
It didn't happen straight away and it wasn't always blatant. I feel it got blatant more and more over the years, and especially now we're having conversations about Black Lives Matter, particularly after, you know, the senseless murder of George Floyd and everything, and a lot of students feeling that, yeah, that their voices are no longer appreciated and they don't feel like they're being treated equal. They feel like second-class citizens. I know it's a bit of a step that I kind of used an image of slavery in that clip that I just showed, but what I was kind of doing with that was I was highlighting how we feel dehumanized. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like a cop suffocating you to death or, you know, shooting you in the street. Like sometimes it can be your best friends, it could be your tutors, it could be the places where you feel the most safe, even in some cases family members who look down on you, like they don't listen to you and they don't understand what you're saying, or they don't want to understand what you're saying because you're a different skin color, and you know, sadly the majority rules, isn't it?
What kinds of passive racism have our students experienced?
Everything I just said, that's kind of how it was. It wasn't like people calling me racial slurs or nothing. It was just like some people would just look at me, laugh at me, particularly when I'm wearing like tracksuits and everything. And like, you know, I do use a lot of slang. I am a young person, but that is a part of Afro-Caribbean culture. Just, you know, even racially insensitive comments, they'd never like call me the N-word or anything. They wouldn't go that far. They know not to. But could just be certain things about oh, Brexit, making derogatory comments about immigrants, or if you're highlighting like how you feel, saying I don't find that appropriate. People would say not everything's about race. I've been hearing that like nearly all my life. I'm 21 years old. I haven't been on this earth that long, so that tells you a lot. And it was kind of worse because I'd often only be like the only black person, or like the one of two black people, like one of like three people of color. Whether it's like living in halls, especially when you're living with people and they have that kind of mindset towards you because of factors that you can't control, such as your skin color. Not really much problems in my class or anything because we were a very diverse course and they were like very open of us, and we had a lot of diverse tutors in my course. I would be hearing horror stories about tutors using the N-word or making comments about somebody's lips just because they're black and stuff. That's not unique at UAL. There's, without saying it, there's kind of a us versus them. Like if you're not white or from like a rich background, sometimes people look at you a certain way or they make comments about you. I've had people try and like imitate my voice, or you know, they put on kind of like very stereotypical voices and they come up to me and they expect me to talk like that, and I just find that very inappropriate. You know, I think it became more, what's the word, clearer when I met more students of color, when I expanded like my horizon around the uni, and I finally realized that, oh wow, I'm not the only black person here, you know, because sometimes it did feel like that, and then, or like the only person of color. There were a few isolating times and stuff, especially when you're socializing. I mean, I feel it's personally worse with the students because you see them all the time. You know, these are the people that you go to get a pint with, that you go to parties with, that you go to watch a movie with, and that you live with, innit? And it's worse in the sense that, you know, these people like me, born in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'd think that them being younger, they wouldn't have such outdated ideals, but sadly, it happens quite a lot of people in our generation. But you know, meeting other people of color was really good, but it was sad to hear that they went through the same stuff, even worse stuff as well, and just witnessing certain things like touching black people's hair. That's always made me uncomfortable.
And how do you deal with this passive discrimination?
But how have I dealt with it? I'd say like you know, I've kind of used like my trauma and my pain and my anger into my art. Like instead of getting angry and arguing with people, like I'm putting all of it into this documentary series, and I can't wait to honestly get it done and just to let it all out and kind of like showcase what's happening in these universities to kind of change people's perspectives. And these conversations may be uncomfortable, but they need to be had. And you know, it's like I said earlier, when people of color like me, you know, black people, Asian people, whenever we talk about experiences or we say we find this offensive, or I don't like being taught to that way, or please don't touch my hair, you know, this isn't a petting zoo. The reaction's kind of like, not everything's about race, so why are you making a big thing out of this? Or people like, they feel like they're being attacked, and that's not the case. It's just kind of like, how do you feel like having someone dehumanize you? Like I said, it's not always being murdered or someone shouting slurs at you. It's most of the time very passive aggressive, and the worst thing is like, this affects like all parts of society, you know, workplace, government, you know, social, like family. It makes me think of how like there's barely any black tutors at any of my campuses and stuff, like tutors of color. It's so bad that someone even spray painted at the CSM campus, you know, the UAL campus at King's Cross. Someone spray painted, there are hardly any black tutors in this school. The fact that someone had to spray paint that shows you how messed up it is. And then when you have like class often intersecting and stuff, like often particularly like when you're black and stuff, you don't necessarily always come from the richest families and everything, so going to union and loans and then having to pay off things is often harder for you. And not only just that, like once you graduate and everything and you're hoping to get a job in the industry, sadly you're far less likely to be hired and everything. You know, it's often people from white, middle class or rich backgrounds who get hired for these jobs and everything, and that's just very unfair. Whatever happened to you know, being rewarded for your hard work? You know, like there's loads of people who work hard, obviously regardless of color, but then why is a system built in a way that people of color, even when they do work hard and they go to university, which is considered a milestone, especially when you come from an immigrant family like mine. I'm a second generation immigrant. My family came here from Uganda for better opportunities. Me and my older sister, we both graduated university and everything. But why is it that it's like harder for us to find jobs, and like we have to go to websites where there's schemes that are built to particularly get people of color jobs? Obviously that's good, but the fact that these schemes need to even exist shows you that we're far from equal, you know.
In what ways do you feel the university is superficial in dealing with racism?
And yeah, sure, I did say that like my university and other universities do try to present themselves as inclusive and diverse, but there's a difference between presenting yourself as something and being that thing, you know. Like, okay, great, if somebody calls me the N-word, they'll get kicked out because obviously they deserve to be kicked out. That's intolerable. But if people are being passive aggressive around me, tutors are making like nasty, despicable comments. For example, the tutor that I mentioned who said the N-word in class casually and stuff, and he only got an absence of leave and he didn't even get fired, then that's how you know like that's a problem. People don't understand racism enough, or they don't even want to understand. Like there's more to it, you know. The whole point of being tolerant and diversity and treating people of color equal is that you treat them equal. You don't make comments about them, you don't mock them, you don't look down at them. Or sure, they do my university, like they'll post like art from students of color, like, you know, creatives of color, graduates of color, like during Black History Month. But that's only 1 month, and then even with that month, they post it last minute. They'll make one post and they'll forget about it. So it's just kind of like we're an afterthought, and you don't want to be treated like an afterthought when you're meant to be a part of the community.
And what can our white allies do to help combat racism?
Obviously, this is hundreds of years of oppression and discrimination, yeah, but I feel what needs to be done, if you genuinely do want to help and you like want to use like your privilege to like help other people of color and not be part of the problem, is listen to people of color. Like if you don't understand something, like a lot of us are actually really calm with explaining it all and having a like civilized conversation and looking over like comments that were made that shouldn't be made or were like problematic, as long as you're willing to learn and you're not going to make the same mistake again. Like we're willing to listen and have the conversation, and we're not gonna be like angry or aggressive like many people see us as. And in terms of the curriculum, yeah, it's just like, I don't know, hiring more like tutors of color, having more people of color in the governing bodies, like students and everything, listening to their demands and their needs, and just treating them like people. And then there's a lot more to do, but at least that would be a step. But obviously, it's not just like people of color who can enjoy this and who I'm targeting it to as well. Like, of course, I'd love white people to like kind of like hear a black perspective about things that they might not even often know about or fully understand, or would like to know about more in it. And I feel that it kind of breaks down barriers and builds bridges.
Lastly, with your filmmaking, what are your plans for the future?
While I do love talking about these topics, sometimes it can be very emotionally draining. That I want to kind of make short films more. I mean, of course, I'd love to make a short film or like a film like on a topic like such as racism and stuff that needs to be talked about, like elitism and classism and everything. But I want to do something a bit more lighthearted, experiment more, become more experienced. Thank you so much for having me and highlighting a lot of the topics I've been speaking about.